At 11:52 p.m., my body camera recorded me standing alone at the edge of a cut cornfield, giving the 3 flash signal we use to identify ourselves to other officers in the dark. 3 short flashes. It's in the footage. You can see my light sweep up and blink 3 times at the timberline across the field, 400 yards out, where I believed my backup had come in on the wrong side. And you can see the timber answer. 3 flashes, same rhythm, same spacing. A cold white light, about 11 feet off the ground, blinking my own signal back at me from a stand of flooded oaks where no officer was standing, where no human being was standing, where the 2 men I'd come to arrest were already facing, perfectly still, their rifles on the ground behind them, and their truck idling with both doors open a quarter mile away. My name is Dwight Hutto. For 19 years, I was a state game warden. What follows is taken from the statement I gave at my own internal review, and from 4 hours and 11 minutes of body camera footage that the review board watched twice, in silence, before any of them would look at me. I'm telling it now because I'm retired, because the 2 men in that field deserve better than the jokes people tell about them, and because the camera doesn't lie. I've heard every explanation. The camera doesn't lie. That October, I was working a chronic spotlighting complaint in a river bottom unit I'd patrolled most of my career. Several thousand acres of cut grain fields, sloughs, and flooded timber along a state waterfowl refuge. I won't pin it closer than that. The families are still local. Spotlighting, if you don't know the term, is poaching deer at night with a light. You run a beam across a field. A deer's eyes throw the light back. The animal stands there blind and frozen, and somebody shoots it out of a truck window. It is illegal everywhere. It is dangerous, and it is cowardly, and catching people at it is the bread and butter of a warden's fall. We'd had calls about lights in those bottoms for 3 weekends running. The complaints had a detail in them I didn't think much about at the time. More than one caller said they'd seen 2 lights, one working the field edges from the road, like spotlighters do, and a second one answering from inside the refuge timber, where there is no road, where there's no dry ground to drive on at all. I logged it as a second vehicle on the levee and planned my night accordingly. The 2 men I was after were known to me. I'm going to call them Royce and Tommy. Local, both in their 30s, a string of small violations between them, over limits, loaded gun in a vehicle, the usual. Not evil men, lazy men. I'd written them both before, and they'd taken it the way most do, a little sheepish, a little sore. I want that understood because of how this ends. They were ordinary. 2 ordinary boys from a town with 1 blinking light, out doing a stupid, ordinary crime. On the night of October 26th, I set up on a field road at the refuge boundary at 9 p.m., lights off, windows down, and waited. Body camera on my chest, dash camera in the truck, both running. That's procedure on a night op. Everything I'm about to tell you got recorded by one or the other, and most of it by both. At 10:41, Royce's truck came down the gravel on the far side of the section, running dark, and a handheld spotlight started working the cut corn from the passenger window. Long, slow sweeps. I let them work. You want them committed. Light plus rifle plus deer makes the case. Through binoculars, I watched the beam swing across the stubble, and I keyed my radio to tell county dispatch I had contact. At 10:47, the second light came on. It's on my dash camera, time-stamped. Deep in the refuge timber, west of the field, a quarter mile past the boundary, in standing water and oaks, a white light lit up and swung in a long, slow arc. The exact arc Royce's spotlight had just finished. Same speed. Same pause at the end of the sweep. When Royce's beam moved again, the timber light moved with it. Sweep for sweep. A half-second behind, like a shadow learning the job. I remember thinking, that's a man on foot in chest waders with 1,000,000 candle power light in flooded timber at night, which made no sense, but it was the only sense available. The refuge has no road in there. We'd pulled the boat ramps for the season. To stand where that light was standing, a man would wade 400 yards of waist-deep slough in the dark in October to mimic a poacher's spotlight. That is not a thing men do. And the light was wrong in a way I didn't have words for until the review board slowed the footage down. A spotlight beam scatters. It makes a cone you can trace back to its source. This light had no cone, no beam. The footage shows a bare point of white light that brightened and dimmed and traveled, but never cast. Nothing around it ever lit up. Not a trunk, not the water under it, nothing. The lab said it best. In one line of the report, nobody at the review wanted to read out loud. The source illuminates the camera, but does not illuminate the scene. It wasn't a light. It was something that looked back the way eyes look back, with no light on it to explain the shine, 11 feet off the ground, in timber where the water runs waist-deep on a tall man. At 10:58, Royce's spotlight stopped moving. The truck sat still in the road, engine running, beam frozen on the field. And the thing in the timber held its light steady too. And then it blinked. Twice. Slow. The spotlight never blinked back. I believe, watching the footage, that this is the moment the two of them understood that what they had taken for a game warden's light, answering theirs all those weekends, was not a game warden, and was not answering anymore. It was calling. Let me put the question to you the way I've put it to myself for years. You're in the truck. Your light's been answered, sweep for sweep, from ground no man can stand on. And then it blinks at you. Do you put the truck in gear and run, or do you get out? You know what you'd like to say. But the footage shows two experienced country boys, armed, in a running truck. And what they did was get out. Both doors. Tell me in the comments why a man gets out, because I've watched it 200 times and I still don't know. At 11:31, I came in with headlights and the red and blue on, expecting a chase or at least a conversation. The truck sat in the gravel, doors open, dome light on, engine idling. 2 rifles lay in the stubble behind it, not dropped, laid down, side by side, parallel, the way you'd set them on a gun rack. Royce and Tommy were 150 yards out in the cut corn, standing maybe 10 feet apart, facing the refuge timber. The body cam has me calling to them from the road. No response. It has me crossing the field to them, my flashlight on their backs, announcing myself, telling them to show me their hands, and neither man moving, not turning, not flinching. When I got to them, I shined my light in Royce's face. His eyes were open. He was breathing slow through his mouth, pupils huge, fixed past me, on the timber. Tommy the same. They weren't catatonic. Tommy's lips were moving a little, and the cam's mic, cleaned up later, caught what he was saying, over and over, very softly, with no fear in it at all, which is the worst part. It learned our light. It learned our light. It learned our light. I have stood next to frightened men. This was not that. This was 2 men standing the way deer stand, inside a beam I couldn't see. At 11:52 came the part I opened with. Out across the field, in the oaks, the white point rose up again. And I did the procedural thing, the trained thing, the only thing that made sense if you still believed your backup had somehow come in through a flooded refuge. I gave the 3-flash identifier, and it gave it back. My own signal. Perfect. Then it began to move toward us. Not fast, not floating. I want to be accurate. It moved the way a light moves when something tall is carrying it and walking with long, unhurried steps through water. And the footage shows my flashlight beam and Royce's frozen spotlight back at the truck and every light on my distant vehicle. All of them. Dim at once. Brown out together for 9 seconds like the whole field was on one circuit and something had put its hand on the breaker. I am not ashamed to tell you I grabbed both men by their collars. The spell, or whatever you want to call it, broke when I touched them. They came up out of it gasping, like men surfacing, and the 3 of us went back across that field at a dead run, and the body cam footage of that run has been described to me as the most honest piece of police video the reviewing officer ever watched. We sat in my truck with the doors locked like children, 3 grown men, and watched the timber until the light sank down into it, the way a thing sinks when it folds its legs and settles in to wait. I did not arrest anybody that night. I drove them to the highway and followed them home.
The case file tells the rest in its flat little voice. Charges were filed and quietly dropped. The county attorney watched the footage once and found a paperwork reason. The refuge closed that unit to all entry the following season. Habitat restoration, the sign says. The sign is still up. There is no restoration project on file. Royce sold his rifles that winter, all of them. And as far as I know, he has never hunted again, never spotlighted so much as a raccoon, and will leave a gas station if the conversation turns to that field. Tommy went the other way. Tommy went back. He told people he had to know what it was, that it had let them go, and things that let you go want something. He wrote letters to the state asking for the refuge gate key, and in March, Tommy's truck was found on that same gravel road, doors open, dome light on, engine run dry, and a single handheld spotlight standing upright in the middle of the cut field, lens up, like a candle on a table. He has been a missing person for 11 years. The dogs that searched for him worked the field happily right up to the refuge boundary and then sat down, all 4 of them, in a row, and looked at their handlers, and would not take another step for anything on this earth. One more thing, and it's the reason I finally agreed to record this. At 12:31 that first night, safe at the highway, I powered my body camera down. Procedure. The screen went dark. The indicator went off. I logged it off in my notebook. Camera secured. 0031. When the evidence techs pulled the file, the camera had kept recording for 14 more minutes. Audio only. The lens shows black, as if covered. The review board listened to it with me in the room. There's the rumble of my truck. There's me, breathing, saying something quiet to myself I won't repeat. And underneath it, the whole 14 minutes, the microphone picks up footsteps. Long, even, unhurried waiting steps, in water, in stereo. One set tracking left of the truck, one set tracking right, matching my speed perfectly, mile after mile, on a dry state highway with no water within 1,000 yards of either ditch. The footsteps stop in the last second of the file. They don't fade. They stop. Both sets, mid-stride, at the same instant, the way a sound stops when it arrives. The techs called it interference. The board called it inconclusive. I called it 19 years, and I put in my papers that spring. I live in town now. Streetlights, neighbors, and I will tell you the one habit I have never been able to break, and then I'm done. I don't flash my headlights at anybody. Not to wave a man through an intersection, not to warn about a speed trap, not for anything, because I gave the dark a signal one time, out in the bottoms, and it knows the answer now. The file on Tommy is still open, the unit is still closed, and somewhere in an evidence server, 4 hours and 11 minutes of body camera footage sits exactly where the state put it, watched start to finish by maybe 9 living people, every one of whom got quieter afterward and stayed that way. These are original stories, written for this channel. If you've worked a refuge, a river bottom, or a back road at night, and something out there has ever answered your light, the submission form is in the description. The next case file is already open.